Thank you, Quick Shot. There was so much blood in that game. There was more than first blood. There was second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. KOO coming away with the victory, though.
KOO.
And Monty, you promised me something weird. You did, and we got it immediately in Champion Select with the Zach pickup. Talk to me about this, because it's such an interesting leap for him to make to that champion. Oh, please.
He's played a lot of weird junglers at times. Sion, Trundle, he pulls out this stuff. And I didn't really like what happened in the early game. I think Fnatic clearly outclassed them early, which I think is one of Fnatic's big win conditions in this series as a whole, because I don't think they can survive in the late game against KOO, so they have to have these big leads.
Yeah, Fnatic with this competition, it's like going to casino and placing $1 million on the early games. Like, yep, coin flip right now. If we make it past...
Ignite on your mid laner.
Ignite on your mid laner. You don't take advantage of somehow Zach was level 4, giving up his blue buff to a level 7 Cassidon. Like, if the game gets to that point where you have the 5,000 lead, you need to just close out, and you just can't afford to make these mistakes where you, get a little greedy. Twice Reignover, fantastic early game pathing, farming, ganking, but then a couple of times he overextends and kind of gives up that lead, and you can't afford to do that.
Jump in here, probably.
I think KOO did a really good job of strategy of what to do. So they blind pick their top, blind pick their bot. That kind of sucks. It's instantly solved by lane swapping, and this instantly solves the whole jungle mismatch with Zach versus Rek'Sai, which also sucks. So they have a lot of early game that is just not fun. They fix that with this lane swap. However, I think this is the KOO passiveness that comes into play. They actually see Reckless and Yellowstar push out and base, and it takes KOO 15 seconds to go, oh wait, I don't want to hit this turret, we're going to back 2. And now it's the standard. And this is where KOO doesn't want to be. And then you see Rek'Sai just completely destroy mid lane, get first blood top. Like, that's just not where they wanted to be.
That must have been some sort of miscommunication. That's really the only way that something like that happens. Maybe one player decided they didn't want to go into that lane after all. But yes, it was very poor, and it did set them very far behind.
Thematically, though, that lane swap kind of helps Fnatic because the strongest lane matchup disparity is the top laners against each other. Huni and Smeb kind of weren't all that relevant in the early game. Huni with a very tank-heavy build actually does a lot more in these early team fights than a Riven that builds damage from behind. Then again, Reignover could spend all his attention in the mid laner. Suddenly, Febiman was super far ahead in CS pressure, and that kind of still allowed Fnatic to take control of the game. Suddenly, though, it wasn't enough for them to snowball, but I think the lane swap was still, in that sense, pretty risky because your main carry, Smeb, he's playing from behind. You're already playing a rough matchup in the mid lane that constantly Reignover doesn't even care about wards. He just hovers there in full vision, says, well, you're not going to farm, I don't care if you see me. I will still out-level the Zac somehow. I don't know how that he stayed a level ahead there, but yeah, Fnatic, they were ahead in the early to mid game.
Yeah, you saw Fnatic on your screen there strategizing after a very tough loss. We have to remember how back and forth this was and how set up they were. You mentioned, well, they needed to get leads. They did get those leads. They almost got their money back and more from that casino. And I want to point specifically to the jungle. Coming into today, Reignover had been a part of all but one first blood for the team. He's now 9 of 10 first bloods, and Huni 7 of 10. Krepo, yesterday you said that somebody else was the king of first blood. I don't know if you can, defend that anymore.
The kings of first blood. You know, what's a king to a god if you have playing here? I call SKT that, but if you have Fnatic playing here like the gods of first blood, but sadly enough, KOO were
wasn't enough.
Non-believer, and they just won the game anyways.
Well, I actually think that Fnatic's strategy coming in was very good. They saw the weakness. They wanted to go for these very aggressive summoner spells, try and take the fight to KOO early. But, we really saw the problem there in not having an additional teleport in the late game. The split push was way too much for Fnatic to handle. They just didn't have very many options on how to actually close that game. And the Dragons just kept letting it over time and time again.
I have to push this forward to the replays because we talk so much about how these teams are going to pair up in the early game. Passivity versus aggression. So first off, 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, 4 for 3 for Fnatic in the bot lane, but KOO is the aggressor here.
I actually like this because, KOO makes the first move here. And if you see, the jungler is actually the first one moving, and Rek'Sai is moving to mid lane. So KOO gets the start to this really, really well. However, we see Huni TP's in right now, way before KOO does, even though KOO's the one setting up this play. And this gives Huni, 2 to 3 seconds of damage before Smeb even gets in. So this gives enough time for mid and jungle to come down to this.
Well, this is fine up until right here. Huni just turns it around. Great Hecarim ultimate, right, to turn this fight. But there's no reason for KOO to do that. LeBlanc, you have to know, is going to be coming down out of that mid lane. So don't get greedy. Don't overcommit. Just back off right after you get a kill or two.
Yeah, and the reverse actually ends up happening a little later where Fnatic sets up a good play around a potential tower dive, but then the play just looks too good, too juicy, and that's usually when you don't want to go for it because Reignover goes in for an aggressive flash.
Yeah, it was only 6 minutes later.
Yeah, 6 minutes later. I believe we have the replay, hopefully, if that's still working over here.
Oh, yeah, the replays have been a little wonky, but here it is right here.
And you can see it right here. Good zoning here, but Yellowstar, he knows he can go for these trades because there's a threat of a dive looming already. So there's nothing the Prey and Gorilla can do here except run. So they get so much damage. Right now, the map belongs to Fnatic. This is okay too, but then Reignover going for the flash here to follow up aggressively, that is just too much. When a teleport comes behind you, imagine just Reignover pathing towards the teleport location of Smeb. Smeb would have had defensively flashed out. Then the re-engage would go straight into the utility AD carrier's ultimate. That would have been a beautiful play where suddenly Fnatic controls the map. But instead, you lose your CC, you don't hold it for the carries, and that is actually one of the big things we've seen this entire game. People not holding their crown controls for when the carries comes in. When you play these CC-heavy compositions, very often you forget to keep count, but you need at least 1 or 2 CCs later on in these fights, because otherwise Smeb can clean up, Febiven can clean up a couple of fights, and that is lack of communication, maybe the pressure of the stage getting to these teams.
Definite lack of communication there with Reignover flashing in while the rest of the team is backing out of that turret.
Very bizarre call there by Reignover, especially because he knew that the Fates call had already been used. He knew Alistar still had pulverized up, so he basically just got double knocked up under turret, and that was it.
I think this is what Fnatic is good and really bad at the same time. Like, this is where I'm talking about they need accurate calls. Because they did a lot of really good aggression where they're turning around fights, where they're keeping up with things. And then this is a perfect example of they weren't accurate enough. The dive looked really good at the start, and the TP came in. They need a cut and run. They already got the advantage of the map there.
Final thoughts, Krebo?
Yeah, just a great coach once said clear calls, good plans, but it didn't get his team anywhere, so maybe Fnatic needs even more than that.
Right, yeah, they need a new mantra. Well, we're going to step away while the teams reset for Game 2 in the semifinal series between KOO Tigers and Fnatic, so don't go anywhere.
What are you doing? You know there will be consequences. You remember the word consequences?
Help!
Onslaught of Shadow splits everyone from KOO away. Febiven coming! 2 for 1. Febiven wants to clean up. It's a triple for Smith. He's on the retreat. He's got the life steal though, and with Reckless down, Smeb is going huge. Yellowstar is late to the party. But Febiven's down as well. Reckless needs to survive and tank. The shields are there, but there may not be enough. He's flashed out, and Kuro chases him. KOO Tigers one step closer to an all-Korean final with SKT.